Hey everybody on YouTube, Disease Please here, and we're on another ramble, or another story, or, well, just pull up a chair and listen up as I talk about something I have a distaste for. And after E3 has, well, I guess you can call it wound down because of all the announcements and like conferences and things have closed, or at least we've seen little trailers of possible games that are coming out in the future, I can discuss VR. At least that, because this video kind of comes from after I watched Sony's press conference, and during, I want to say, the middle part of the press conference, there was a pretty heavy helping of VR titles among things shown. Of course, Sony does the thing where they show the video and then they don't really give you much setup to it, and they just kind of throw it at you. So that is their take. Skyrim is also in VR. I think Bethesda announced that, amongst other things, and I think there's Fallout in VR. So there's VR has shown up at E3, but it's probably not the dominant powerhouse that some people thought VR was going to be. So I'm going to talk about why I dislike VR, at least for what it is now, and why it's not truly catching on. So we'll just begin. Well, I guess we can talk about the Sony thing. So Sony shows all of their games as they're clipping through. They show Destiny 2 and all these things. Well, Destiny 2 was actually after this little PlayStation VR like snippet where they had like a 3D side scroller that was in VR, and some people were like, "Why is this a VR game?" So there may be elements later on in the game where like the camera will switch and then you're like behind the character or something, and then they get a jump. And it's like, well, it's like, well, I don't think you're gonna like the perception change. At least that was the whole thing about VR is experiencing the world with the perspectives and all these things. And VR has been romanticized, at least I believe so, because movies have always had these things where you strap on the headset, like Matrix, where everybody's in the Matrix and things. That's like your most popular movie. Maybe Sword Art Online, if you like anime. Those places have, okay, here's what they think VR is, and then that's kind of like what people would want it to be. I wouldn't mind it if it actually went there, because then it's not really VR. It's more like you're casting your entire consciousness into a machine, and it's not like you're using your eyesight to perceive what is in front of you. You're kind of using your the way that was played is like your cognitive functions, or what truly puts you in the world is usually how they always put it. So I don't think we're actually going to be drilling holes in our heads to make these VR systems work better, at least later on in the future. But of course, that's a little down the line, if VR even sticks around, or if it finally does, maybe it'll finally hit the footing. Okay, so the things about VR that I dislike are it's just very hard to get into. The price range to get into VR is extremely hard. For the PlayStation VR, you have to pay $500 for your console itself, and then you have to pay $500 for your bundle. You need the camera, you need the PlayStation Move controllers. For a lot of people like me, I went from the 360 to the PS4, and of course I didn't buy the PlayStation Move or anything, so I didn't have those controllers. So I would have to invest in the full bundle to make it work. Although, and then we did wind up getting the camera for the PS4 because it was cheap, so we got it just to have. But now it's like I would be missing the Move controllers and the headgear, and they sell those separately, but you're still spending about $500 just to another extra $500 on top of that for things like the HTC Vive. I think Vive. I always call it Vive, but it's Vive. So the HTC Vive, that one literally takes over your entire room, where you have to put sensors in the two corners, and then I think that's the better VR machine at this moment. It's just that it's just not that price range for that is like in the 800s, and the amount of space it takes. So you're not just the money, but it's actually the space it takes. And of course, there's the whole thing with VR where if you're swinging around your arms with these controllers, you might actually knock shit over or hit people that are beside you. So you do have to be careful. I think the Vive has a camera on the inside that allows you to see on out if you hit like a side button, but that's just for like the overhaul thing. So not just the price, it is also what else we have? Oh, there's also the motion sickness thing where if people there are people who wear glasses and other things where people who just they can't really take the movement and they get sick. There's some people who like they can't play first-person shooters because the action will make them sick. So there's things like that that go through. I just don't think VR caught fire like some people thought it would. And also, it's just and another bad thing was most of the VR games are tech demos where you do one thing in the VR and you don't do anything else. It's just like, okay, you're shooting guns in this one. Yeah, and then it's mostly horror games too, which is probably a good idea because you will get a response if you because they always have like earbuds and then they can feel it in their ear like boom really loud, so you could kind of probably get the response you want. But it's just if they're over flooded with horror games and shooter games, that's really all they have, and then their graphics are never the greatest. At least they haven't been to this date. Eventually that's probably going to change, and it's just but the starting price and eventually I would think. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the computers, because if you have the Vive, that's great, but you still have to have a computer who could use it, and you're not going to get a low-end computer to run the thing. You still need a pretty high-end computer. That would probably set you back $600, and then over with the $800, or maybe you need an even more expensive computer. It's just all of these barriers that are in the way, and I know I'm not the only one who's talked about this. I've watched videos of people who know more tech than I do that talk about this, but it's just seen from a consumer where it's like, I don't want to invest all of this in something that was like, I could just get better games and cheaper, and I don't have to. And then what happens if I do get motion sick? Well, then you can't really enjoy it for too long. You have to enjoy it in bursts, and that's not how you want a game. At least for some people. I mean, like 10 minutes of a game and be out is fine. That's why the mobile games are so great. So it's kind of like mobile has gone up, while VR has kind of plateaued, I think, until they've made an improvement somewhere. Maybe once they can find a way to make the VR cheaper and better and more responsive, we'll see an upheaval of all this, and then it'll be cheaper and people will be able to get on it. So there's maybe waiting for the future when VR updates, and then maybe maybe the game guy and all that shit turns into like facial stuff or something. So that's just my take on why I don't like VR, and it was the biggest snooze part of the Sony conference. Between all of their good stuff, it's like, okay, here's VR because we have to show VR to show we're not giving up on it. Didn't show shit upon the Vita because they pretty much put that in the legacy thing and are ignoring it. Just like Ubisoft, we didn't talk about For Honor, so we're not really gonna do nothing for it. It's probably gonna be gone. They did do stuff for Steep, which some people even forget existed, among other things. It's just these things they have to talk about because they want to tell their audience they're not giving up on it. Don't give up on it, buy it. But it's like, why? You suffer, because I remember they had the Microsoft table that was like all 3D or something, and you could like stack stuff. It was like, I don't think I want to invest in that much room. Not for that much. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Do you guys like VR? Do you have any of the VR stuff? Even the Google Cardboard counts. Yeah, it's the cheaper version, but it is. Do you get motion sickness from VR if you have it? Does pricing stop you from getting VR, or maybe does the motion sickness do? Or does the pricing of the games, because the games are also full $60 releases in some cases, and then it's like they're not even that long, or you're not getting much for that $60. And then will VR ever catch up? How long will it take, or what do you think? Or will VR be the only way to game? Will it eventually just overtake the way we do it now? We'll see more in the future, I guess, but that's just my take on why I dislike VR, why I'm lukewarm to it. We'll see you guys for the next rambling video.